Dear students, we start lecture arrhythmias and heart blocks, and at current lecture we intend to discuss clinical questions according arrhythmias and heart blocks, and we will. I'd like to focus your attention at practical questions according diagnosis and treatment. Arrhythmia is a problem with the rate of rhythm of the heartbeat, and during the arrhythmia, the heart can beat too fast or too slowly or with an irregular rhythm. And there are different classifications of arrhythmias. And by the way, different types of arrhythmias, they have different clinical value and different clinical prognosis of arrhythmias. That's why let's discuss classification of arrhythmia. According classification of arrhythmia, we stratify arrhythmia to bradyarrhythmia or bradycardia. These groups of arrhythmias include sinus bradycardia, sinus pauses, sick sinus syndrome, bradycardia, tachycardia syndrome, AV, conduction blocks, and intraventricular conduction abnormalities. At the second part of current lecture, we'll discuss properly these questions. And second groups of arrhythmias include tachycardias or tachyarrhythmias, and all arrhythmias, types of arrhythmias, they have been stratified in two main groups. Accordingly, the anatomical structure of conduction system. At this image, we can see cardiac conduction system, and here there are sinus node, AV nodes, and bundle branches, right and left bundle branches. Normally the signal starts with the sinus node, pacemaker cells in the sinus node, and this causes the right and second the left atria to contract. Then the electrical signal travels down to AV node. At AV node, the physiological function of AV node is to retard the electrical signal in order to let ventricles in order to let atria contract, and then the signal after AV node, the signal travels down to bundle branches, causing the right and left ventricles to contract. According classification of arrhythmias, we use this classification. We divide all arrhythmias to two main groups: supraventricular arrhythmias. Supraventricular arrhythmias, they originate in the atria. Ventricle, as for ventricular arrhythmias, they originate in the ventricles, and these two main groups of arrhythmias, supraventricular and ventricular arrhythmias, they have different clinical value and different treatment approach and clinical prognosis. As for supraventricular arrhythmias, they usually do not require specific antiarrhythmic treatment, unlike ventricular arrhythmias. And ventricular arrhythmias, they are most dangerous because they can directly affect the ability of heart to pump blood to the rest of the body, and moreover ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fibrillation are there. These are life-threatening conditions because they can lead to sudden cardiac death. That's why these two main groups of arrhythmias, supraventricular and ventricular arrhythmias, they are not equal by clinical meaning. Other classification of arrhythmias include bradyarrhythmias and tachyarrhythmias. At this picture, we can see comparison of ECG at patient with bradycardia. We can see long prolongated RR interval, and in patient with tachycardia, RR intervals are very short. For sinus tachycardia, we can see that RR intervals become shorter, but these are supraventricular tachycardia, as we can see that the presence of P wave and P waves, they are preceding the QRST complexes. For bradycardia, sinus bradycardia, it can be found in health people, for example, in trained, physically trained people, for example, in athletes, in sportsmen, or severe bradycardia, very severe bradycardia can be as a result, consequence of iatrogenic influence, for example, side effect of different medications, for instance, beta blockers or non-dihydropyridine calcium channel blocker, diltiazem or verapamil or other medications. And sinus tachyarrhythmia, sinus tachycardia can be as physiological response to significant physical exertion or emotional stress, or can be as a result of different pathological conditions, for example, fever, for example, heart failure, acute or chronic heart failure. And tachyarrhythmia, they have been stratified in two main subgroups with narrow complex, QRS complex, narrow complex tachycardia, and wide complex tachycardia. And at this ECG, at left photo, at left picture, we can see bradycardia. This is sinus bradycardia because the P wave is present, and P wave is preceded by, is located before QRS complex. RR intervals are about the same, equal, but the QRS complex is not deformated and is narrow. It is narrow. At the right photo, this is a clinical case, 30 years old female with sinus tachycardia. This patient's heart rate is 125. This is sinus tachycardia, as we can see that QRS complexes, they are not deformated and they are narrow. RR intervals are about the same, equal, and the P waves, they are present. Supraventricular arrhythmias. Supraventricular arrhythmias, according to supraventricular arrhythmias, I would like to focus your attention at atrial fibrillation because clinical investigations, they have shown that patients with atrial fibrillation, they have increased rate of mortality, they have a higher likelihood of sudden cardiac death, onset of heart failure, and they have increased probability of strokes. Moreover, the likelihood of stroke in patients with atrial fibrillation is high, up to 30% of all strokes are related with onset of the atrial fibrillation, and the rate of hospitalization in patients with atrial fibrillation is higher. it is about 30–40% of atrial fibrillation patients annually. And according clinical investigations, patients with atrial fibrillation, they have decreased quality of life because left ventricle dysfunction, due to left ventricle dysfunction and onset of heart failure, and it can be related with significant cognitive disorders and onset of vascular dementia. Therefore, I'd like to focus your attention at questions related with atrial fibrillation. What does it mean, atrial fibrillation? Atrial fibrillation, this is an arrhythmia which is characterized by irregular and often rapid heart rate, and this condition is dangerous as it can increase likelihood of strokes, onset of heart failure, and heart-related complications. What is the pathophysiology of atrial fibrillation? During atrial fibrillation, the heart's two upper chambers to atria, they contract irregularly, chaotically, and during atrial fibrillation, there is the atria systole. The systole of atria are absent. The systoles of atria are absent, and at patients with atrial fibrillation, there is re-entry, multiple re-entry mechanism, and abnormal impulses. Some abnormal impulses, they causes the excitement of heart muscle of atria, and therefore at ECG, unlike normal ECG, at ECG in patients with atrial fibrillation, we can see irregular RR intervals and multiple small F waves, and it is very important that in patients with atrial fibrillation, unlike patients with normal ECG, the P wave is absent. Here you can see P wave at left photo, P wave in patient with normal sinus rhythm. Unlike this photo, at right photo, the ECG in patient with atrial fibrillation includes multiple small F waves with high frequency, more than 300 per minute. At this photo, we can see the example clinical case of patient with atrial fibrillation. At all 12 leads, we cannot find out P waves, and we can see multiple small F waves. Small F waves, they are well visible at standard leads, in second, third standard lead at AVF and V1 and V2. But it's very important that patients with atrial fibrillation, they have narrow QRS complexes, as atrial fibrillation belongs to the group of supraventricular arrhythmias. And according diagnostic and management of atrial fibrillation, there is evidence-based information which published in European Heart Journal. This is European Society Cardiological clinical guidelines for management of atrial fibrillation, which was published in 2016. According pathogenesis of atrial fibrillation, there are several triggering factors of development of atrial fibrillation. For instance, type 2 diabetes, heart failure, obesity, ischemic heart disease, hypertension, aging, and genetical predisposition. By the way, the prevalence or incidence of atrial fibrillation, high prevalence and incidence of atrial fibrillation can be explained by global aging of population of the Earth. And all above mentioned triggering factors, they cause morphological changes of myocardium of atrial. So we can find out increased activity of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, increased activity of fibroblasts, and development of atrial hypertrophy, and development of fibrosis due to increased activity of the fibroblasts. And therefore, patients with atrial fibrillation, they have multiple re-entry mechanisms. They lead to irreversible morphological, irreversible changes of myocardium, of atria, enlargement of atrial chambers of atria, and development of stasis of blood, and onset of intracardiac thrombi. And finally, these the intracardiac thrombi, they lead to thromboembolia of cerebral arteries and development of stroke. Diagnosis of atrial fibrillation, for diagnosis, we use several diagnostic criteria. First, narrow QRS complexes, narrow and not deformated QRS complexes. Second criteria, irregular RR intervals. Next criteria, absence of P waves. Next criteria, presence of small F waves. In patients with atrial fibrillation, early diagnosis of atrial fibrillation is crucial and necessary for patients' prognosis. Risk factors of development of atrial fibrillation. First of all, presence of the structural heart disease, cardiovascular diseases, for example, hypertension, ischemic heart disease, other conditions. According risk factors, we remember about age, smoking, presence of the other diseases, cardiovascular diseases, pulmonary diseases, endocrine disorders, and alcohol. Alcohol, by the way, alcohol and obesity, they are well-known risk factors of or development of atrial fibrillation and significant physical exertion. That's why patients who are predisposed to development of atrial fibrillation, they are not recommended to take part in large sport competitions. When we speak about atrial fibrillation, we must mention about, we must notice about left atrial appendage. By the way, left atrial appendage, this is a small ear-shaped sac in the muscle wall of the left atrium. To be honest, it is unclear what function, but in normal heart, the heart contracts with each heartbeat, and the blood in the left atrial appendage and left atria is squeezed out of left atria to the left ventricle. When a patient has atrial fibrillation, the electrical impulses that control the heartbeat do not travel in an orderly fashion through the heart, and the fast and chaotic impulses do not give the atria time to contract. By the way, patients with atrial fibrillation, they do not have joint systole of atria. And that's why in patients with atrial fibrillation, there is no effectively atria. They do not effectively squeeze blood into the ventricles, and because the left atrial appendage this is a very little pouch, blood collects there here and can form blood clots in the left atrial appendage and in the atrial chamber, and finally they lead to the development of thromboemboli of cerebral vessels and development of stroke. In order to improve patients' prognosis, there are two main treatment approach for prevention of cerebrovascular thromboembolic complications. First approach, this is pharmacotherapy. We prescribe anticoagulants. We prescribe oral anticoagulants, warfarin, or new oral anticoagulants, for example, rivaroxaban, apixaban, dabigatran, edaxaban, etc. But invasive cardiologists, they proposed and currently they use this invasive approach. This is left atrial appendage closure. This is percutaneous procedure. We use wire-guided approach, and we deliver this device. By the way, this is Watchman device, Watchman implant. Watchman implant, it is like a small umbrella. It can be closed and it can be opened. At closed condition, it is delivered through the right ventricle to the left ventricle via the wire, and then it is delivered to left atrial appendage lumen, and then it so look at this photo, and then it opens and close this cavity of left atrial appendage. So this device, Watchman device, is made by synthetic material, and finally later it will closed by the surface of epithelial cells of the patient. Using of Watchman device Watchman implant can significantly decrease the likelihood of thromboembolic complications. But according to clinical guidelines, using of Watchman implant, patients with implanted Watchman device, they are recommended to continue treatment with oral anticoagulants, for example, dabigatran or rivaroxaban, etc. So, early diagnosis of atrial fibrillation. Early diagnosis of atrial fibrillation is important for patients' prognosis, because in patients with early diagnosed atrial fibrillation, patients with early diagnosed atrial fibrillation, they usually do not have very enlarged chambers of atria, left and right atria. That's why the atrial fibrillation can be treated, the sinus rhythm can be restored by pharmacological therapy, or electroimpulse therapy. That's why the main question is early diagnosis of atrial fibrillation. But how to diagnose atrial fibrillation? By the way, some patients with onset of atrial fibrillation can be asymptomatic. That's why current time we use smartphone devices. This photo is demonstrating simple device is at the back side of this smartphone. There are two metal electrodes. Patient touch his fingertips to these electrodes, and on the screen of smartphone we can see simple ECG, and this is artificial intelligent approach, and it can detect, diagnose atrial fibrillation and alarm and send alarm message. Also, I watched devices. They are equipped by electrode at the belt of iWatch, and it can do simple diagnosis of sinus rhythm or atrial fibrillation. That's why current time we use these devices. They are helpful and they have become popular and well distributed. According mobile applications, mobile apps, they are also useful. They are free for everyone, for every doctor. Doctors, they use these mobile apps in order to calculate the probability of thromboembolic complications in these patients. We assess the CHA2DS2-VASc score. By the way, there are two scores, CHA2DS2-VASc and Hasbled, but the CHA2DS2-VASc score assesses the risk of thromboembolic complications, and also, moreover, this mobile application was which have been provided. У меня лекция, можно попозже перезвонить? Я перезвоню попозже, у меня лекция. By the way, this mobile application, which provided by European Society of Cardiology, it is also updated and useful for practical doctors. Ventricular arrhythmias. According classification, ventricular arrhythmias, they are generated in the ventricles, and these arrhythmias are the most dangerous as they directly affect the ability of heart to pump blood to the rest of the body. And in practical setting, in clinical setting, ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fibrillation, they are the main arrhythmias leading to sudden cardiac death. So there are different, the main three mechanisms of onset of ventricular premature complexes: atomicity, reentry circuit, and triggered activity. Etiology can be cardiac and non-cardiac, but we focus our attention at cardiac, especially structural heart disease, post-acute myocardial infarction, valvular heart disease, myocardial cardiomyopathy, myocarditis, etc. At clinical presentation, we focus our attention at different typical complaints of patients. They usually complain for palpitation, sometimes lightheadedness, syncope, and typical chest pain. Physical examination, we can find out irregular heartbeats and variable or decreased intensity of heart sounds, and augmented beat following a dropped beat. We also assess jugular pulse, and we check the pulse in peripheral arteries. At laboratory instrumental tests, the laboratory tests pro-BNP brain natriuretic peptide is useful according clinical investigations. This increased level of the NT-proBNP, it is a sign of prognosis, of bad prognosis of patient. According imaging studies, of course, we refer patients to cardiac imaging studies as echocardiography for assess morphological changes of heart and also functional assessment of heart function, as for example ejection fraction. Sometimes in patients with without significant structural heart disease, without severe heart failure, we refer them to some stress testing, exercise stress tests. And sometimes in patients with ischemic heart disease for assessment of cardiac vessels, coronary vessels, we can refer them to coronary angiography, cardiac catheterization, or other instrumental tests. When we check ECG, we can see significant we can see diagnostic criteria of ventricular extrasystoles. What can we see at this ECG? Look at this round red rounded complexes. These are ventricular extrasystoles, and we can see that the ventricular extrasystole has several criteria. First, diagnostic criteria, it is not preceded by the P wave. P wave is absent before the QRS complex of ventricular extrasystole. We cannot find out P wave. Second criteria is the QRS usually widened and deformated, wide and deformated. Next criteria is the RR interval. RR interval before the ventricular extrasystole is shorter than typical RR interval between normal QRS complexes of with sinus rhythm. And after the ventricular extrasystole, we can see long compensator pause. How to decide full compensator pause or not full compensator pause? Full compensator pause means double. So in order to assess a full compensator pause, we measure the RR interval between the normal QRS complexes, and we double this interval, and this interval between the QRS complex before the extrasystole and after extrasystole, this period includes two normal RR intervals. And this full compensator pause, it is usually typical for ventricular extrasystoles, unlike supraventricular extrasystoles. How to detect ventricular extrasystoles? We refer patients to rest ECG. We attach the chest leads to patient's chest and leads to patient's extremities, and assess the ECG. In arithmological practice, in arithmologists, or maybe in patients who need specific antiarrhythmic therapy, we can refer patients to 3D mapping system. It includes multiple leads, more than 200 leads. for example, 252 electron beats, and these complex ECG electrocardiographic mapping is useful in practice of arrhythmologists. For patients with arrhythmias, in order to detect them, we refer them to ECG. But we know that ordinary ECG, it usually includes a very short period of ECG. At ambulatory ECG monitoring, we can observe ECG during more prolonged time, 24 hours, 48 hours, sometimes 72 hours, or maybe 1 week, during 1 week. That's why at ordinary outpatient clinic practice, we refer patients to Holter monitoring. At this procedure, patient is wearing a small device which is attached to his belt, and also we can assess his ECG at computer during 24 or much longer time. And Holter monitoring is useful for assessment and for finding some rare arrhythmias, ventricular or supraventricular arrhythmias. And it is useful for very popular in clinical practice. Classification of ventricular arrhythmias. Lung classification of ventricular arrhythmias includes classes from 1 up to 5. Class 1, 2, or 3 depends on the frequency of arrhythmias and the type of ventricular arrhythmias. And also we highlight the class 5 of ventricular arrhythmias. This is very dangerous arrhythmias because patients with class 5 ventricular arrhythmia, they have very high likelihood of development of ventricular tachycardia and ventricular fibrillation. Here I would like to highlight your attention at the different clinical cases. For example, at this picture, at the right side, we can see allarrhythmias, bigaminia, 1, 2, 3, 4, quadrigyminia, or this is two consecutive ventricular extrasystals. Or group extrasystals, 3 ventricular extrasystals consecutive. According classification of by the LAN, we can see multiform extrasystals or monomorph, unifocal or multiform extrasystal. At the right, this picture, picture, we can see that these extrasystals, this is example of bigaminia. Each normal Curas complex is accompanied by ventricular extrasystals. This is bigaminia. But as the same lead, we can see that all these extrasystals, they have the same shape. That's why we call them unifocal extrasystals. Unifocal because they originated from the same place. On the other hand, at the left photo, we can see that as the same lead, there are several ventricular extrasystals with different shapes. With different shapes, these are multiform extrasystals. That's why we put diagnose class 3. And at the lower photo, we can see ventricular tachycardia. What ventricular tachycardia means? What does mean ventricular tachycardia? If you can see at least 6 consecutive ventricular extrasystals or and more, you can put diagnose ventricular tachycardia. At this ECG, we can see that all QRS complexes, they are very wide and deformated. We cannot find out the P wave and RR intervals, they are same, and the frequency is very high. This is ventricular tachycardia. This is clinical case, patient with myocarditis. He had undergone the Holter monitoring, and the doctor found polymorphic ventricular extrasystole. This is typical for patients with active myocarditis. Also, we use classification of ventricular extrasystoles according to origin. We use we say left ventricle origin of ventricular extrasystoles and right ventricle. At the left ventricle origin, at the right chest leads V1 or V2, we can see the shape of ventricular extrasystole, which resembles left bundle branch block. On the other hand, at the right ventricular origin ventricular extrasystole, at the left chest lead V5, V6, we can see the shape of ventricular extrasystole resembles the right ventricle, right bundle branch block. For assessment of cardiac arrhythmias, we use a different instrumental approach, diagnostic approach, and ambulatory ECG monitoring, of course, can provide much longer period of assessment of heart ECG, but it is not enough for assessment of rare and dangerous ventricular or supraventricular arrhythmias. That's why also current time the remote monitoring devices, ECG devices, they have been using for several years, and here you can see smaller cardiac implantable electronic device. This is wearable ambulatory ECG electrocardiographic device. The upper exam device is the new model. It is less than previous device, and this device is implanted to patient under the local anesthesia, and it can provide remote assessment of ECG in patients with different arrhythmias, and it can work approximately half a year, 6 months. How to treat ventricular premature complexes or ventricular arrhythmias? We use first of all, we must assess the severity of ventricular arrhythmias, ventricular extrasystoles. Patients with low-grade, mild ventricular extrasystoles, they do not need specific antiarrhythmic therapy. We assess patients' cardiovascular risk of major cardiovascular complications, cardiovascular outcomes, and we must estimate risk of probability of sudden cardiac death. During treatment of patients with ventricular premature complexes, we first of all focus our attention at treatment of structural heart disease. Patients without structural heart disease and without symptoms, asymptomatic patients, and patients with mild and benign ventricular or supraventricular extrasystoles, they do not specific treatment. When we select antiarrhythmic medications, we try to select beta blockers or non-dihydropyridines, calcium channel blocks, verapamil or diltiazem. Accordingly, patients' ejection left ventricle ejection fraction. Patients with reduced ejection fraction, they should be avoid of verapamil and diltiazem. About antiarrhythmic therapy, specifically antiarrhythmic therapy, it is not typically recommended and best targeted to address limiting symptoms. We must assess risk-benefits ratio, and we must take into account possible pro-arrhythmogenic side effects of antiarrhythmic drugs, especially class 1A. About patients with structural heart disease, we must remember that class 1 antiarrhythmic drugs, they are not recommended in patients with structural heart disease. I mean 1A class. But in patients with structural heart disease, the best choice, this is beta blockers. Beta blockers, they decrease the probability of sudden cardiac death, and they are useful in patients with concomitant heart failure and ischemic heart disease. Patients without structure, with some ischemic heart disease, you can use as a second choice amiodarone, only amiodarone. Treatment of patients with ventricular arrhythmias must be prescribed accordingly the level of ejection fraction of patients. Patients with reduced ejection fraction, they have highest risk of cardiovascular undesirable side effects. That's why we also prescribe other medications, as for example, Ra inhibitors of renin-angiotensin-aldosterone system, also inhibitors of aldosterone. As for non-medication therapy, ablation therapy, we use ablation therapy via percutaneous approach at patients with arrhythmias during ablation therapy. The thin and flexible wire you can see at this photo. This is catheters. This catheter is inserted into the vein through a small cut and threaded up into the heart. And at the end of this catheter, look at this. At the end of this catheter, there is electrode sends out radio waves, and these radio waves, they create heat. This heat destroys the heart tissue, and it causes abnormal the heart. It causes finally small scars. And this electrotherapy, radio frequency electrical therapy, ablation therapy, destroys these abnormal signals. Who are indicated for ablation? First, patients with frequent symptomatic and monomorphic ventricular premature complexes which are refractory to medical therapy. Second indication, patients who we take into account patient's choice. Patient who choose to avoid long-term medical therapy. And third indication, patients with ventricular arrhythmia storm that is consistently provoked by ventricular premature beats of a similar morphology. By the way, the ablation can be two types: radio frequency ablation when we use electrical signals, and second type, this is cryoablation when we use extremely cold. Supportive management, of course we take into account level of the blood pressure. We prescribe appropriate antihypertensive medications in patients with hypertension. We prescribe medication therapy for ischemic or coronary heart disease. Of course, we prescribe anti-ischemic medications, and we control electrolyte imbalance. Ablation therapy. So as for ablation therapy, I would like also to highlight your attention at the most arrhythmogenic areas of the heart. These are pulmonary. These are places where the pulmonary veins attach to a left atrium. These are the most arrhythmogenic areas in the heart, and we use cryoablation or electrical radiofrequency ablation. And finally, after ablation, we can see that impulses cannot pass the ablated tissue, and this is helpful for patients. Of course, during management of patients, do not forget about quit smoking, alcohol, stop alcohol, and using or excess using of caffeine. Next part of our lecture is dedicated for conduction disorders, and when we speak about conduction disorders, we remember about cardiac conduction system, and I'd like to remind you that this is cardiac conduction system. The signal starts with as a pacemaker. This is sinus node, and then this causes the right and left atria to contract. Then signal travels down to AV node and bundle branches, causing the right and left ventricle to contract. So here we can see bundle branch blocks. Usually the electrical signal in the heart travels down the left, and this is the left and the right bundle branches at the same speed, causing the left and right ventricle to contract at the same time. But in patients with structural heart disease, with hypertrophy of ventricles, with patients with ischemic heart disease, the one side travels more slowly, left or right ventricle slowly than other ventricle. This is known as bundle branch block. And accordingly, the location of slowing travel of electrical signal, we stratify bundle branch block to left and right bundle branch block, depending on which side the block occurs. And here I would like to show you ECG of patient with right bundle branch block. What are the criteria of right bundle branch block? We see, we focus, by the way, bundle branch blocks, they are diagnosed according the chest leads from V1 up to V6. At the right chest, V1 and V2 are called as right chest leads. V5, V6, they are left chest leads. When we see at right bundle branch block criteria at right chest lead at V1, we can see deformated and wide QRS complex. And often we can see specific deformation of QRS complex as RSR, like M-shape complex. On the other hand, at V5 or V6, we can see deformated S-wave. Let's see at ECG of this patient with V1, we can see appropriate above mentioned deformation of QRS complex. We can see RSR complex like M shape, and let's see at V6. At V6, the S wave is white and deformated. As for left bundle branch block, at V6, we can see deformated and very wide Curious complex, and I want you to pay attention at the absence of the Q wave. And at the V1, the S wave is white and deformated. And you can see at this photo, patient at V6, the Curious complex is white and it is deformated. Look at this shape. And there is no Q wave. On the other hand, in V1, the S wave is very white and deformated. So other types of conduction disorders include AV blocks. At AV blocks, there are 3 types of degree of AV block: first degree, second degree, and third degree. At the first degree, there is simple prolongation of PQ interval, more than at least 0.2 second and more. At patients with second degree of AV block, we highlight to Morbus 1 and Morbus 2. At Morbus 1, you can observe gradually increasing prolongation of PQ interval. Let's compare this PQ interval, then second and third, and then after the next P wave, the Curious disappeared. As for AV block second degree Morbus 2, the PQ interval is prolongated, but it is constant. And after the next P wave, suddenly the Curious complex disappeared. As for third degree of AV block, at this case, the atria and ventricles, they are excited independently from each other, and patients with this type of AV block, they are usually have very, very rare heart rate, and approximately 40 or less than 40 per minute, and they complain to syncope. That's why I would like to introduce you classification of syncope, which is offered by European Society of Cardiology, and patients with syncope can be due to ischemic heart disease, structural heart disease, or non-cardiac diseases. How to help these patients? Patients with second degree of AV block or third degree of AV block with complaints to syncope, they need to be referred to specific treatment, implantation of pacemaker. Pacemaker, this is a small device which is implanted to human body, and the pacing wire is attached to patient's heart, and this device generates impulses, and this device substitutes the sinus node. But in some patients with high risk of other life-threatening arrhythmias, they are referred to implantation of a specific device, pacemaker plus implanted cardioverter defibrillator. Implanted cardioverter defibrillator, it can check ECG and diagnose life-threatening conditions, is, for example, ventricular tachycardia or ventricular fibrillation, and if necessary, it gives electrical impulse. This slide is showing a list of references I have used for current presentation. We have finished our lecture. Thank you very much for attention, and do not hesitate to ask me questions.